Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin and begin each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Ruben Bressler.
Oh wow, I'm first this week. Hi everyone.
Aaron Campbell.
How's it going?
Yeah, see,
I almost wasn't ready for it.
I swip it up.
Ruben feels like the prettiest girl at the prom.
I know. You're so used to when your teacher takes attendance when they go in alphabetical order. I wasn't ready.
Well, in alphabetical order, you are first, buddy.
Present.
That was me.
Thankfully, I'm in my desk chair already.
We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most prolific and letting us know what card we didn't choose as one of our top 10 unset cards. Ruben?
Well, this week's comment was a wise submission from user Brian Wise, who said, okay, this card should have made Evan or Aaron's lists, especially Evan's. The card is Chaos Confetti, and here's why it should have. This card was created about a story that was floating around back in the early days of Magic. A player played Chaos Orb, but his opponent had been spacing out his cards all across the table so that it was almost impossible to effectively even hit a card with the orb. So the player called the judge over, explained to him what he played, then shredded his Chaos Orb and tossed it into the air across his opponent's field and nailed half of his stuff. This all turned out to be an urban legend in Magic, but through that urban legend, we got this ridiculous card. It's a pretty iconic one. Again, this one matches up with like Blacker Lotus and Jack in the Mox and some of those cards that are takeoffs on some of the most iconic Magic the Gathering cards. And yeah, Chaos Confetti is certainly high on the list.
I mean, to have the fingers there, like tearing it apart, it very much was an urban legend. They're very much, back in the day when someone would say, "Hey, here's Chaos Orb. You can't play in tournaments anymore, but let me tell you this story."
Yeah. That
was a thing that actually happened back in the 90s when the rocks were soft.
Absolutely, yeah. My favorite Chaos Orb story comes from what we lovingly called Big Magic. So there was a event in Providence one time where somebody had taken as many of the promotional big cards as they could and put them in decks together, and they printed a promotional Chaos Orb that was this big. And they put them in like comic book backs. And so trying to do that from 10 feet up in the air to try to hit your opponent's stuff was a ton of fun.
That is insane.
But yeah.
I think they did print enough like oversized cards that you can build some sort of deck with them.
Oh yeah. No, there were 4 playable 60 card decks of various types, and they all had Chaos Orb. So everyone was playing basic lands about 3 feet from each other across various, big tables. It was awesome.
Wow, that's awesome. So, congratulations to Mr. Brian Wise. Please hit us up on Twitter and or our subreddit and or email at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know.
Smoke signals.
Right.
Show up at our house.
Exactly. You will get a $50 gift certificate courtesy of CoolStuffInc.com. So congratulations, Brian. But we're going to move on here to our top 10 Simic cards, of which I believe, and if my count is correct, there are 108 of them.
Right.
And as a result, we're a little bit overlappy, but you know what? Yeah. That's okay. That means we love things.
It's cool.
We comparatively love things.
It's a happy overlappy. It's not a. It's
a happy over. It's always a happy overlap.
Happy overlappy, y'all.
It's not a sappy overlappy.
No, it's all good.
And it's not a crappy overlappy.
No, there we go.
So don't take a nappy overlappy. That's enough of that.
Enough of the happy overlappy. Okay.
Any more puns? And it'd be a crappy overlap.
I just went crappy, but it's fine.
Did you?
I did. Number 10, Ruben, what you got?
So you guys know, usually my power rankings lend themselves to cards that have proven themselves on the pro scene, have been in top decks for a long time. Mine is currently in one of, if not the top deck of the metagame right now, and it's Rogue Refiner.
Nice.
When it came out, I think that people sort of we're like, all right, it's value, colorless green and a blue for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and get 2 energy. That's a good rate.
Right.
I'm happy with that. But it's been a major player. It's a huge piece of the early to mid game of right now Teamer Energy, and earlier than that, Teamer Emerge and the various like blue-green Emerge decks and things like that. It's just a super solid card. It had 16 copies in the most recent Pro Tour Top 8, which is a ton. It's just a very, very, very good card at the rate. It sees play. Energy, of course, we've talked about how, even good cards just get that much better when you start talking about energy, particularly because this one isn't an energy sink. This one just fills up your gas tank. And so you can put it towards whatever you end up wanting, your Confiscation Coups or your Whirler Virtuosos or your Harness Lightning, whatever you happen to need at the time. And in the meantime, it stands there, it attacks, it blocks, it trades, it slices, it dices, it julienne fries, it does all the things that you want. So I'm a big fan of Rogue Refiner, and it deserves a spot in the top 10.
It replaces itself. It provides, and energy has become this kind of weird, I think, sort of resource to look at, because it's not just, it gives us 2 energy to maybe do this. It does this and that and the other thing, and Attune to Aether has sort of like this weird cryptic command card now, which powers up so much more, and just a 3-mana 3/2 draw card is still fine on the curve.
Right. But that's the thing about all the energy cards, is that they're fine if you subtracted energy from them. They're all just reasonable Magic cards that have this extra thing attached to them. And so that's why energy's all over the place and why it's so powerful. And Rogue Refiner is no exception.
And Wizards just couldn't get around it. It was Wizards. I mean, energy was either going to be the best thing in its standard environment or the worst thing. There was no middle ground, and here we are.
I just remember when Solemnity was previewed, and there were people that thought that this card was actually going to do something. And I remember we thought that set was going to be like the set of answers. And I was just thinking the other day that I haven't seen, it may happen, it may have happened, and I simply haven't experienced it. But have you guys seen Solemnity be used? Because it doesn't feel like it. Okay.
Not at all.
So, yeah.
It doesn't attack, I guess the way I would say it, to be on the right axis, and the cost is a little bit behind. Again, you have Attune to Aether, and then you have a 2-drop that gives you energy like a Long Tusk Cover, whatever, or you have a Rogue Refiner on 3, and it's a little too late.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, and this is something you will probably never ever hear me say again, but one of the reasons that a card like Rest in Peace is so good is that even if you don't have it on turn 2, say you don't find your Rest in Peace till turn 6, you're exiling what they've already accumulated, and then you're preventing them from having any more. If you don't have that Solemnity on curve, it's really not doing anything, and even by then it might be too slow on the way that some of these decks work. And so if you play a Solemnity on turn 6, it doesn't do anything about the energy they've already accumulated. It's just like you said, it's too late, and I think it's it was a good intention for a design, but just doesn't work well.
If Solemnity had Rest in Peace to your opponent for energy, that would be a weird wording on the card. But it certainly would have seen more play. Absolutely.
I think the reason it couldn't do what I feel like we sort of wanted it to do is that it would have destroyed Infect, and
remove
Infect
all counters from target player. That certainly would have been a problem.
And Rosewater was like, I do not want Infect to be removed. Infect is forever. Leeches was the worst design in the history of all Magic cards, and blah, 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 blah. Not quite that bad, but he didn't like it.
But he will get rid of Golgari Grave Troll. That's fine, but God save Infect.
I mean, have you played with Golgari Grave Troll? That card is busted.
Do you know how many I've signed in my lifetime? Come on.
That's the joke.jpg. Aaron, what is your number 10?
It's rare that this happens, but my number 10 is actually higher on somebody else's list.
Nice.
So,
wow.
Well, also, shout out, I'm wearing Simic colors tonight because I'm a little green-blue bow on. Hey.
I made a trip to the motherland, the literal motherland, my mother's house here in Ohio, so I don't have quite the wardrobe selection, so I accidentally wore Boros colors with the Run It Up symbol. So that's my bad. I'll make up for it some other time.
And you're still bringing those taters. You're still on that tater train, bro.
I mean,
is it really?
What is Thanksgiving without potatoes? I mean,
it's true.
Fair enough.
Delicious taters.
Delicious. Well, my number 10 here, luckily, is not higher on someone else's list, nor is it the same. It is something that is very versatile. Now, blue-green can be defined as a lot of things, and sometimes it can be defined as more than one thing, and sometimes the spell about Simic has more than one mode, such as in Gatecrash, such as in Simic Charm. Simic Charm was nice, clear. There was a charm for all the different guilds, and they were all super cool. Obviously, we gushed over Boros Charm. Simic Charm, not quite there, but it did so much good work in very interesting ways. It was a card that wasn't so powerful that you expected it all the time. And as a result, I think you could really kind of sneak up on people. It's a blue, a green for a uncommon instant. You choose one. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, or return target creature to its owner's hand. So you had the giant growth. You had everything gets hexproof. I don't know what the shortcut for that would be. Or target creature is unsummoned, which is all good, positive things in their own little way. Not usually worth a card in Constructed, but when they're all 3 cards and you kind of slice it how you want, you can save your creature, you can kill them, you can do a nice trade, you can save your creature from a removal spell. There's all sorts of awesome ways that Simic Charm can be sweet, and obviously it was ridiculous unlimited. But Simic Charm is my number 10, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, it sees occasional play in Modern, in Infect, as a matter of fact, because it is a pump spell that can also grant hexproof or return a blocker. It's just a really good. It's also a really good example of how to do a 2-color charm. There's a very easy green effect. There's a very easy blue effect, and then there's the chocolate and the peanut butter coming together with both effects together. So I really enjoy Simic Charm quite a bit.
That's awesome. So number 9, Aaron, do you have one?
I do, yes. So my number 9 is a card that when even now, the deeper I get into Vintage, and even the deeper I get into Legacy, there are cards that I'm not surprised to see at the tables. So like when I'm watching a Vintage game, I see Deathrite Shaman, I see Leovold, I see Mishra's Workshop. Those are cards of a certain power level where I'm like, this makes sense. I would expect to see this in Vintage. And then there's my number 9, where every time I look at it, I'm like, really? My number 9 is Trigon Predator. So it's 1, a green and a blue. It's a 2/3 flying, which is fine. Like, it's right. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can destroy a target artifact or enchantment that player controls. I still don't get why this is Vintage playable. Maybe it's like the fact that you can cheat it out. I don't know, and I'm assuming, because artifacts are so ubiquitous in the format that it's very rarely ever going to be dead. But every time I see this, I'm just like, it just doesn't have the same oomph. Like you're looking at a list and you're like, Brainstorm, they're like fireworks, Ponder, Trigon Predator. It just doesn't pop like the other cards do, and it's just like, really? So yeah, it's my number 9, because I'm always just like, oh, okay.
There are very, very few sort of repeatable disenchant effects. As far as I can tell, there's basically aura shards, which is an uncommon from Invasion that green and white and a colorless, whenever it's an enchantment, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy a target artifact enchantment. Right. Or Trigon Predator. So
that's about it.
In a world full of moxes and really scary other artifacts, this thing actually used to be expensive. Nowadays it's like 20 cents or whatever because they reprinted it 4 or 5 times. But literally back in the day, Trigon Predator used to be like a $4 or $5 uncommon at one point because they just would not reprint it. They wouldn't give you an effect like it. It has evasion. Sometimes that even matters in Vintage. But
the 3 toughness used to be relevant in Vintage because nobody used to play Bolt. So your only removal spells were Swords, which obviously gets rid of everything, or Fire Ice, which this dodged, because you could tap down the gargantuan things that people tinkered into play. But the Fire half doesn't deal with Trigon Predator, and you can sneak this out turn 1 and pick off a Mox every turn. Just like Gorilla Shaman. It looks a little weird and doesn't see play in any other format, but boy howdy, does it get the job done.
Oh man, card is still this way. It is value. It is nice,
absolutely
sweet value. Showed up in Dissension and didn't really do anything in any other format, but like just kind of snuck in there in Vintage.
Yeah,
and that's totally awesome. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9. Again, you guys know I love it when people dominate formats, and I love it when they get banned from formats. I love things that are too powerful. This thing is too good, and my favorite thing to do in Elder Dragon Highlander is to tap 5 mana. Step 1, tap 5 mana. Step 2, untap your 5 mana. Step 3, 4 question marks. Step 4, Prophet of Kruphix is my number 9. Prophet of Kruphix, boy, is this a busted card when you can get going with it. And when you can untap with it, which, by the way, is next turn. It's 3 colorless green-blue for a 2/3 human wizard from Theros. Untap all creatures and lands you control during each other player's untap step. You may cast creature cards as though they had flash.
Card is busted.
Oh my.
Busted.
Card's ridiculous. Combines Seedborn Muse with Teferi, with Yeva, Nature's Herald. It's like all the best things that you could ask for. You get really good combos with it. Primarily Tradewind Rider is the one that I always see people messing around with this guy trying to tap and untap. I mean, you can also combine it with things like Axebane Guardian to get 1 billion mana. But it is, Seedborn Muse is popular. Prophet of Kruphix is just even better. And it is so powerful that it is banned in Commander. And that is quite something for a 2/3 for 5 mana.
How good is it? It's banned in Commander. Like, when they ban it in Commander, the thing is just busted. It's not just untapping the lands. It's not even just giving your creatures flash. It's all the creatures and the lands untap every single turn.
And if you're playing blue-green, then you have a lot of creatures that tap to do things of various shapes and sizes. So it's even better on that front.
They did a really good job of sort of burying the lead there. Like they gave you this woman and she's dancing and her little flavor quote is like, life is a dance. And you're like, oh, how wonderful. She's spinning her little silks around. And then like when you actually play it, you realize how powerful it is. And it really did a good job of like softening it and like, this is fine. We're going to put some pretty colors on here. You're never going to know what hit you. And then when it's on the battlefield, you're like, I just want it to go away.
I got to play a little bit of Commander when this was legal, and there is nothing fair about this card. It gets
absolutely
really dumb, really fast. All the guys that tap for mana, all the things that tap to draw cards and stuff, like, it's just insane.
I cascaded into this off of a Maelstrom Wanderer one time. Boy, let me tell you how happy I was.
Wow.
Yeah. That was not a fair turn at all. It never feels fair when you're able to untap with Prophet because you're playing blue in your deck, so you have spells to cast on your opponent's turn, let alone the creatures that, if you happen to not have to counter any of your opponent's stuff, you can dump onto the field. Card's just great.
Oh, man, my Court of Calling just so happens to have all this bonus of
Right.
untap and everything. Oh, it's so terrible. Oh, so I
I hate
can't...
it when that happens.
I know, right? I can't give you a number 9 because it's higher on someone else's list. So we're going to move on here to number 8, which is interesting because I was expecting someone else to have this higher on their list, perhaps, or even the same on their list, but apparently not. This is actually another card from Distinction, much like Trigon Predator had a really cool card. There was an amazing card that was a rare card that was super, super weird because they were supposed to be weird, and at the time they're all about +1/+1 counters, and Experiment Kraj is weird.
God, yeah.
The card is just crazy. It's 2 blue, 2 green, 2 generic mana for a 4/6 rare legendary ooze mutant. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It has all activated abilities of each other creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, and it taps to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it just kind of becomes everything, and it just kind of sticks everything together. And they did a lot of this with later Commander products, but Experiment Cross was the first. It was the first one to kind of sort of have this blue-green thing of like, I will take what is yours and just work it into myself. And it's just a weird purpley, oozy orifice thing, and it's strange.
Well, it's certainly a flavor win, especially if you're familiar with the backstory of that set. It basically comes down to, Momir Vig has been sort of growing this thing, secretly, and his plan is to just sort of let it run loose, on Ravnica and do exactly what the card indicates it's going to do. And so, not only is it a very unique not only does it have unique abilities, and not only does it expand on the graft mechanic, which was related to the Simic at the time, it's also just a flavor win in that it does exactly what the monster is supposed to do. And so, and it's also a trope we've seen in horror movies before, with sort of like the blob and what happens. And so, it was a neat take of a neat take on that and bringing it into like a game, medieval role playing kind of format.
Yeah, with the flavor text of course it will grow beyond control. It was designed to choose its own evolution.
Right?
Yeah. Says Momir Vig. It takes what it wants, and then it has claws.
This was definitely close for me. Like, it's one of the most Simic cards, if not the most Simic, like, things going out of control evolutionarily and scientifically that I can imagine. It's also the centerpiece of my favorite weird rules interaction, which is if you have this and then Mycosynth Lattice, which turns everything into artifacts, and then March of the Machines, which turns all artifacts into creatures, and then you play a Planeswalker. If you play a Planeswalker and put a +1/+1 counter on this now artifact creature Planeswalker, Experiment Kraj has all of the loyalty abilities, but doesn't have the
Loyalty.
Planeswalker rules, so you just plus it an infinite number of times.
Ooh, that's intense.
Does that work?
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
I don't
Rules
think so.
pertaining
Because
to
it can't,
Planeswalker abilities only pertain to Planeswalkers.
but it can't pay loyalty because it doesn't have loyalty. Now, what it probably
But
could do...
if you plus the loyalty and do that an infinite number of times...
There's any judges in the YouTube comments, feel free to weigh in on this one.
This really weird, crazy interaction.
Experiment Kraj now has the activated abilities of all the Planeswalkers that it has +1/+1 counters on. So that this is how it's evolved and how we got here.
I think that's great no matter what happens because Simic's weird. All right, so moving on here. Ruben, what is your number 8?
Well, get used to hearing this, folks. My number 8 is higher on someone else's list.
Oh, no.
But we will get to talk about it soon because it's there somewhere.
And you can be guaranteed I will interrupt that person. That's what I do here.
Aaron, what is your number 8?
So my number 8 is a character who made her debut in Duels of the Planeswalkers 2012, and she was a character that had acquired a bit of a following. Like, even though she wasn't one of the major characters of the game, there were many people who really liked her and certainly wanted to see more of her. And so Wizards decided that they were going to make her a full-on Planeswalker and give her her own card, and this was sort of her debut into the Pantheon. My number 8 is Kiora the Crashing Wave.
Yeah.
And so this card is really unique in that it's not only the debut of a Planeswalker, but if you look at the art specifically, it's very much a callback to, I think it's just called the Wave. Like, it's an iconic Japanese work of art of the Wave. I think it might have a longer name. Somebody feel free to correct me on that. But there's definitely a callback to that. And so this was Kiora's first card. It's 2, a green and a blue. She only comes into play with 2 loyalty, which is a little low when you're paying 4 mana for a Planeswalker. And her +1 says until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent control. So you basically just put a bubble around something. You can -1 and draw a card, and you play an additional land this turn. So she gives you this sort of Simic, kind of ramping ability that they're known for with cards like Urban Evolution and such. And the ultimate is pretty mind-blowing. So a -5, you get an emblem, and at the beginning of your end step, you get a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. And so if you put her in the right deck, if you're able to sort of use these to make up like a pillow fort style deck, this was a format that had Sylvan Caryatid and things of that nature. And so, if you're able to stall long enough and keep Kiora alive long enough, which between having some mana dork walls and her bubble ability, you should be able to do, you just start making 9/9s, and it just gets out of control really, really quickly. It takes you a long time to get to that point, but when you get that emblem down, it's basically just game over. And I just really love this card. I think she made a really big splash, no pun intended, with her first card. We've certainly seen her come back. I really enjoyed her rivalry with Thassa in particular. I thought that whole interaction was really well done, and I really like this character. I'm really glad they fleshed her out a little bit in the Battle for Zendikar block, and I'm really glad that Kiora is an official Planeswalker.
Sorry, the piece of art that you were referencing, by the way, is the Great Wave of Kanagawa.
There we go. Thank you.
By Hokusai.
Okay.
Well, the Great Wave off Kanagawa, if we're going to be, protecting.
Oh.
Excuse me, guys. The Great Wave off Kanagawa.
Off Kanagawa.
Off Kanagawa. Get it right. Now,
Champions of Kanagawa, Evan Irwin.
Right, but not quite. Now, Kiora the Crashing Wave, I think, and I want to say, like, sort of universally was seen that if it had just been 3 loyalty, would have been an amazing Planeswalker. Would have, I mean, even if the ultimate went up to -6, starting with 3 loyalty and then being able to go to 4 off 4 mana, it for me, it never shined quite so clearly as this. I felt like they made another Kiora to be like, we'll make this one a little bit more powerful because the Crashing Wave was so close, but if you -1 her, all of a sudden you paid 4 mana with a 1 loyalty walker that hasn't protected herself in any way, and you played another land and she replaced herself, but it just wasn't quite there. So that to me was like, I was like, you made the Planeswalker we wanted to see, and she's just not good enough.
Yeah,
that made me sad.
Yeah. This I mean, the 9/9 Kraken token didn't really, rustle my jimmies, so I was never a Kiora the Crashing Wave fanboy, but it's a good card. And I'm a fan of Explore, and that -1 is an Explorer on a Planeswalker, so you get to reuse it. It at least lets you draw a card, play a land, and then your opponent has to waste an attack on it or something like that. So I'm a fan.
There was just, I think, I think Born of the Gods is seen pretty universally as not a great set.
Right.
And part of it was because they pulled one loyalty, I think, too many off Kiora the Crashing Wave.
I agree.
Which is unfortunate. That said, we're going to move on here to number 7, which, Rubes, you got nothing?
Higher on somebody else. Well, I have something.
Oh.
It just so happens that one of my co-hosts decided it was a better card than I did.
Oh, I saw what you did there. So, in the tradition of calling back to some old school cards, if you will, and again, even cards Trigon Predator, I think, has been reprinted 4 times. This has also been reprinted 4 times. My number 7 here actually has the word Simic in the title itself. Used to be one of the biggest, scariest things that you could possibly play. Actually did strike some fear into the heart of a few Magic players. Not so much these days. We're spoiled, okay? But Simic Sky Swallower from Dissension was a blue, a green, and 5 generic mana. It was 7 mana for a 6/6 rare Leviathan with flying, trample, and can't be the target of spells or abilities. Before there was hexproof, there was essentially Shroud. Before there was Shroud, there was can't be the target of spells or abilities, because that's what the cool kids used to do. They didn't have a keyword for it. They just did that. And Simic Sky Swallower, when it resolved, usually killed people. That's what it did. That was its job. It was weird. It had little tangly things, and it was coming to get you, and there was nothing you could do to stop it because it was too big for everything. So you did either have sort of a wrath effect, or you had some sort of sacrifice effect, or you died. And that was really cool. I had Simic Sky Swallower in my cube for a very long time until essentially more Simic cards came out that did more powerful or more interesting things, but it does hold a nice dear place in my heart for being awesome and big and scary and killing lots and lots of people. That sounded weird, but whatever.
Until Inkwell Leviathan happened, it was the go-to Shroud thing that you got with Oath of Druids, or that you reanimated, or any of that good stuff. I've hardcast many a Simic Sky Swallower out of many people's cubes, and in flashback Ravnica drafts and things like that. I'm a fan of Simic Sky Swallower. You're right that it has gotten outclassed, but 7 mana for a 6/6 flyer that can't be targeted, boy, that's some good beef.
With the flying and the tramples.
Yeah.
To quote Momir Vig, we've bred out the shortcomings of the species' natural form and replaced them with assets of our own design.
It's just such an over-the-top card. Like, the art is over the top. When you look at everything it does, it's just...
And it's got, like, teeth on top of teeth on top of teeth.
It's just...
And teeth are scary. I don't know if you've seen the new It movie, but teeth are scary. That's what they do. Aaron, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is a callback to a character that we had visited once before in the Magic lore. And some people had kind of wondered how they were doing, because when we last left them, they appeared to be in the thick of things. And I think it seemed like they were going to do well. But while we haven't revisited that plane yet, and certainly that set yet, I think, Wizards did want to, grant those of us who were wondering how they were doing a little bit of a look into what they're up to. My number 7 is Ezuri Claw of Progress. So for those who don't know, Ezuri was one of the elves during the Phyrexian invasion in New Phyrexia, and he was one of the rebels, or the resistance. He was in the resistance. And so he was leading that faction. And then it seemed like, I believe we ended up losing New Phyrexia. But I think they kind of left it where, like, there was this little pocket and they might be able to turn things around. Yeah, no. Ezuri got captured by Jin Gataxias's faction, became completed, as the Phyrexian said, and now he's gone bad. So Ezuri's 2, a blue and a green. Legendary creature, elf warrior, 3/3, and he says whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you get an experience counter. That was from the Commander 2015 set. That was when the experience counters came into play. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is the number of experience creatures you have. And so when you put him, it plays very well with sort of infects thing, where you put big counters on little infect things, and then they become very scary infect things. And so it was very sad. I remember when they spoiled what happened to Ezuri, it was like, no, because he's all warped and angry, and it's just like he's been kind of airtied a little bit, if you remember airtie. And it's just very sad to see him go, because he was one of the rare heroes of the New Phyrexia set that survived initially, and then to see that ultimately he did not was very sad.
He began his life as a Ezuri Renegade leader, which was from Scars, which was a 3 mana 2/2 that green you could regenerate an elf, and for 5 mana, the sort of the overrun mana, if you will, 3 green, 2 generic mana, elf creatures gain gain +3/+3 and trample to end of turn. And that card has done some good things in Constructed for what it's worth. Yeah. And this one was just like, oh yeah, he totally turned batty and he got screwed up and it was bad.
Yeah, this is quite the EDH All-Star. Pretty much, this is the combo with, I believe this is Sage of Hours is the combo. You get up to 4 experience counters, and then you play Sage of Hours, and then you just take all of the turns for the rest of the game. That has some interesting combos with some other stuff like Cultivator of Blades. Certainly a popular general in Commander. And I had the mono green Ezuri commander deck with my 30 or so snow-covered forests back in the day, but the green-blue version certainly much more combo potential.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, to look at it, I've just got sort of a wiki article pulled up here. Essentially, Malira and the Planeswalkers had left Azuri's camp before Ezuri was inoculated. Apparently, there was an inoculation from the Phyrexian infection. You could,
Great.
So he could be
Get
vaccinated.
Your flu shot, kids.
As it were. So he could be vaxxed, but he wasn't. And what happens when you don't get vaxxed is that you get completed by the Progress engine. Jin-Jitaxias is blue-aligned faction of Phyrexians. The Phyrexians even have factions? I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm not...
Yeah, so each of the 5 Praetors is a different faction, and they each sort of go about their conquest in very different ways. The white faction is Elish Norns. They're more about a religion and sort of...
conversion therapy.
Right, and the plates that you see, that's very unique to them. The red faction is more about tending the forge. Like when you look at the... that's a thing. And then the blue faction is all about like experiments and the mind and like things like that. And then the green version is obviously corrupting the under
growth.
No, it's a weird Phyrexian-y term, but they each go about it in different ways in theory.
I mean, and I just enjoy the fact that it says following an excruciating process of transformation.
It ain't fun.
Because now he looks all sad and completed and crazy and he's got experience he's going to kill you with. That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're going to move on here to number 6. Hey, Ruben.
Hi, what's up?
You're like, hi?
Yeah, I have one, but it's higher on somebody else's list.
But it's not there quite yet. Okay.
Not there quite yet.
Fair enough. Let's see here. So, I have one here that showed up in what is ultimately, I think, one of the most unfortunate sets to happen to Magic, and it makes me sad. But Dragon's Maze kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Dragon's Maze kind of sucked.
Sure.
Oh, honey.
But it did have a pretty amazing mythic rare in it for Simic, because Progenitor Mimic was one of the coolest, most interesting creatures, a shapeshifter that you've ever seen. It's a blue, a green, and 4 generic mana. For a 0/0, it's a mythic shapeshifter. You may have Progenitor Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it gains, quote, at the beginning of your upkeep. If this creature isn't a token, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of this creature. And it's kind of, it sort of sounds weird when you say that, but basically it's a clone that makes clones of its cloneness. And it just clones while it clones, and it gets scary, and you make sort of this army of awesome, and you can just clone anything, and it's super fun. I got to play an amazing Simic EDH deck, and this thing was just ridiculous and awesome and fun, and I loved every second of it, and Progenitor Mimic is awesome.
I had one of my worst tilting sprees ever because of this card. I will never forget it. I was playing at Gen Con, and this young man had paired that card with Acidic Slime.
Ooh.
I said...
That was a thing.
I said some very unchristian things.
You lost some religion, didn't you?
Furious. And I was just like, what the hell is wrong with you? And he's just like... And I'm like...
There was mumbles, and then your land went away, and there was more mumbles, and your land went away.
Oh my god, I was not pleased. Like, this card, I have nothing nice to say about this card.
Yeah, Progenitor Mimic on Acidic Slime in Standard, and on Thragtusk in Standard.
Thragtusk was so good.
I mean, this thing has done some pretty interesting things. I mean, Master Biomancer was a popular one as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people were trying to make it work with Biovisionary.
Yeah.
Which is adorable. You should go read Biovisionary. And if you can come up with a better way to get Biovisionary to work than Progenitor Mimic, then boy howdy, you did it. But yeah, Progenitor Mimic is just a great card. It's one of the things I look for when I'm trying to do the blue-green ramp thing in Cube all the time. Even to this day, it's still just a a fabulous addition to any of those decks that are trying to copy your deranged hermits or what have you. It's a really fun card.
It's a little pricey, but I think it's worth the cost of admission, if you will.
Just like everything in Dragon's Maze, it was a little too much, but this one is the one that's still probably the right. Like, you couldn't print this at 5. Right. I don't think that 5 is a reasonable number for this, even though 6 is too much. But yeah, I've had some fun with some Progenitor Mimics in the past, that's for sure.
Much like Stone Rain should be 3.5 mana.
Right.
But it can't be.
Exactly right.
Progenitor Mimic should be 5.5 mana, but it can't be.
Exactly.
So, Aaron, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is higher on somebody else's list.
Wow.
My last higher, though, so I'm not going to have a chain like Ruben does.
Well, unfortunately,
how dare you?
As we turn over here to number 5, I will begin my own chain of higher because I won't have one for a little bit, and that's okay.
Well, it's all right, because at number 5 I share a number 5 with
we share a number 5.
Hey guys,
share a number 5.
Look at you,
Aaron. Would you like to talk about our number 5?
Yeah, absolutely. So our number 5 reinvigorated an archetype in Modern that was doing okay. Like, it wasn't doing poorly, but it gave this deck another method of attack. It turned a combo deck into more of a toolbox deck. Our number 5 is Bring to Light. Mm-hmm. So this card is 3 a green and a blue, and it has Converge, which is the mechanic that the Battle for Zendikar block was known for. And so it's a sorcery. You can search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colors of mana you used to cast Bring to Light, and then you exile that card, then shuffle your library, and then you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So this card started seeing play in the Scapeshift list. So before Scapeshift was just a straight-up combo deck. You know, you were either playing a Rug version or you were playing a red-green version, and the main goal was just to Scapeshift. And then this card came out, and it gave the deck more of a toolbox quality, where you still could go get your Scapeshifts if you wanted to. But if you were facing other decks, it gave you almost like a Kiki Court or a Birthing Pod approach, where you could go looking for Thragtusk, you could go looking for like Katakis and things like that. You know, just go looking for like your Hate Bears or whatever you wanted to get. And so this version became popular for a little while. I tried it in ad nauseum and didn't really have a lot of luck. Scapeshift costing 4 was really the sweet spot. Like, you really, anything costing more than 4 was really not worth it, or had to be a really good 5-drop. And so it injected a little life into this archetype, which isn't easy to do. Whenever I look at this card, I immediately think of the Evanescence song, even though it's Bring to Light and not Bring to Life. But I still hear it in my head, and yeah, it's a nifty card.
Wake her up inside.
And I think it's a nifty card, and I think that it's a neat way to use Converge. I think Converge really didn't get a lot of love, but this was one of the few times it was this and Painful Truce really made Converge shine.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Bring to Light. I've Bring to Lighted for a Tendrils of Agony in the Vintage Cube a couple of times, and boy, let me tell you how good that feels.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
There was a 150 card Bring to Light Modern deck that was popular in like this past spring or winter, because hey, when you draw a Valakut, sometimes that feels bad, but if you got 64 lands in your deck, it don't matter. And so that was a fun thing for a little while. Bring to Light is just a cool, interesting, fun, and good card. And so I'm a fan of Bring to Light, and that's why it's this high on the list. Also particularly potent again in Modern with Valakut and Scapeshift, bringing it back into the focus.
Bringing it back to
light.
Light, gotcha.
Bring me back to light.
Wake up.
Me back to light. I don't know the lyrics to that song, because I got more Magic the Gathering top 8s than MySpace top 8s, Aaron. But boom, did it, roasted.
You burnt. Now I got
it's both of our number 5s.
Well, it was my number 9 because there's just something. First of all, the art is amazing. The art having that really cool Zendikar. There's floating, except now there's buildings floating, which is neat. Converge, I think, kind of sucked, but it's okay because those 2 cards that really, really awesome, like this one and Painful Truths, were super awesome. I don't know if they were really worth an entire mechanic, but whatever, it's cool. Battle for Zendikar did Battle for Zendikar, and that's what happened. One of those cards that when it was first spoiled, it was like, oh, that's kind of neat and interesting, and then like never was really talked about again, but made its way back as sort of a toolbox, as your ability to say, this is my 5th copy of whatever it is I wanted to do, or this is my ability to go tutor for whatever sideboard I needed to sideboard. whatever card I was looking for my sideboard. Bring to Light is good old-fashioned tutory goodness, and in a way that I think they controlled it the right way. Again, Converge, not great, but it really kind of made this card work in, if you wanted it to be as good as it could be, you had to really stretch your mana base. And that was sweet. All right. So we're going to turn over here to number 4, of which I don't have one because it's higher on someone else's list. I'm actually going to go ahead and throw down the gauntlet and say that I think this is Ruben's number 1, but we'll see when we get there.
Bold claim. Okay.
We'll see. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is also higher.
Oh my god, I'll handle this.
So many 4s. Aaron, give us number 4.
So the longer I've been playing Commander, I've come to realize that Simic is probably the most popular color in Commander. And I think part of that can be attributed to my number 4. My number 4 is a card that there have been a lot of calls to ban, both in like local play groups and in national play groups and worldwide play groups. And when you look at the card and when you really think about it, it does kind of seem like they didn't really think about it when they made it. My number 4 is Kruphix, God of Horizons. So Kruphix is 3 a blue and a green. He's a legendary enchantment god, indestructible. As long as your devotion to green and blue is less than 7, Kruphix isn't a creature. You have no maximum hand size. Oh, not done. Nope. So that's sort of tapping into the blue side of Kruphix. But then here's where the green part comes in. So if unused mana would empty from your mana pool, that mana becomes colorless instead. So there's a bit of a banking aspect to it, which is similar to Omnath, Locus of Mana, where you can essentially carry mana with you. So let's say you have some mana and you don't use it, it just becomes colorless, and you basically just sort of can keep it, if I understand it correctly. And so when you take this green aspect of having essentially unlimited mana, and the blue aspect of unlimited cards, that's a recipe for disaster. And so Kruphix is also very important in the lore of the story. He was instrumental in helping Ajani and Elsbeth get where they needed to go, or I think they were looking for him to like give them information as to how to fight Xenagos, and so he was very important there. But yeah, when you look at this card, you're just like, why? And it's just crying out to be abused, and many people have abused it, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This card is, there's so many X spells in blue and green that you want to be using in EDH, from Genesis Hydra to Stroke of Genius.
Plasm Capture.
Yeah, Plasm Capture is another great one. And you just get to shove all of that extra mana into your trunk and save it for a rainy day. In addition to having the spellbook effect. Flavorfully, this is probably the most flavorful of the gods, at least of the two color gods from Born of the Gods, I think. It's an enchantment most of the time, which are very difficult to deal with, and it's an indestructible enchantment at that, so your pretty much only hopes is Anguish the Unmaking or Revoke Existence is about it. And you just get to save all your things for a rainy day, because the two abilities that it has don't require being a creature. It's not like Iroas. It's not like you're attacking with your Xenagos, you know what I mean? So keeping Kruphix an enchantment that isn't a creature, much like Keranos in blue-red, very popular, and yeah, it's a super strong effect.
It's a good thing that the Prophet doesn't completely break with this thing.
Oh, yeah, no, of course not.
Prophet of Kruphix plus Kruphix, God of Horizons, is filthy. Nasty, filthy, crazy.
It's interesting that the Prophet is banned, but the God is not. I could have sworn when I made this list that Kruphix was, and he's not. But I guess it's just that there's been so much talk of it that.
Well,
they push each other into overdrive. Is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, one without the other. Basically, Prophet of Kruphix by itself is busted. Kruphix without Prophet is not quite. It's interesting here just to read some of the backstory on Kruphix. And how sort of Kruphix found himself in a conundrum because Xenagos had ascended, and he's afraid of what he'd seen in the minds of those who came to Theros. He was troubled by what Elspeth and Johnny Kiora were thinking about, essentially, and all that good stuff. So
if I recall, Kruphix was the one of the gods who wasn't squabbling. Like, all the rest of the gods were arguing about how to deal with Xenagos, and Kruphix was off by himself, kind of staying out of trouble, but also thinking as to the best way how to deal with it, which even all of the other blue-aligned gods were still in their, having their fisticuffs trying to deal with this new god situation.
And then Kiora was like, give me that Biden, yo. Like, thanks, lol, JK. And then out we go. Kruphix, however, a really cool card. Definitely on my short list, but didn't make my list. But thankfully did make Aaron's, which is fun. All right, so moving on here to number 3. I actually get to talk about a card now. I'm
Sweet.
Pretty excited about it. I got to skip a few. It's fine. I'm not like Ruben skip a few, which is like he's like the supersized skip, you know?
First of all, you right. But second of all, how dare you?
So number 3 was, man, you know what? It turns out I really enjoyed Dissension. I enjoyed what Dissension did. I enjoyed the cards Dissension introduced, and we're still going. We're not even done with the Dissension cards. However, one of the Dissension cards that really kind of, sort of broke serve, if you will, on not only is this a card that you kind of heard of, it goes beyond that, where there was Stifle. And Stifle was a card that stopped triggered or activated abilities, and that's cool. But what if you could target and counter a spell or an activated ability or a triggered ability, and that would be Void Slime. For 2 blue and a green mana, just 3 mana, it's a rare from Dissension. It's an instant that counters target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Can't stop mana abilities, and they never could. But the artwork itself, being all entwined in the vines, is really sweet. Stopping someone from just doing whatever, whether it's just counter spell or you just you get them when they're trying to do that activated ability at the exact right time. It was great and constructed. It's been everywhere in casual. It's been in cubes for years and years. Void Slime is super sweet, and while they're trying to sort of go beyond that these days, because now they just have sort of the mono blue Void Slime, if you will. Void Slime, for its day, for its sort of decade plus of existence before they decided to reach beyond it, Void Slime was awesome.
This was my number 10.
Nice.
This was my number 6.
Okay, yeah, the art is fantastic, and again, it just sort of continues this Simic trend of them just being capable of very scary things. You're looking at the flavor text of it's technically an ooze, but its lifespan measures only seconds. In that short time, its appetite for magic is extraordinary. The ability to just sort of counter anything. We're so used to, normally counter spells nowadays have limits, where it's like you've got Spell Pierce, where it's like counter, non-creature spells, and only if they can't pay 2, and then you have like your sensors, and you have your remands and things like that. But this is really just counter anything. And that's a really scary thing. And you're right, this was definitely, I think, one of the first to let you do all of that in a very kind of gross package of just the artwork. And
counter target anything. That's one of my favorite things I've heard when referencing Void Slime. It goes back to the typical Simic blue-green thing of being able to or being capable of anything. Mm-hmm. Anything can happen, and you can, everything is possible when you're part of a team. And this is just another example of that, being able to counter any effect or any spell. Giving you that kind of flexibility is something that Simic is just well known for, and it's on all of our top 10 lists.
Now, in Aether Revolt, they did give us Disallow, which essentially was Void Slime for 2 blue and generic mana. Right. But until Aether Revolt, until the printing of that card, Void Slime reigns supreme, and I still think it's one of the coolest and best Simic cards there are.
I do think it's interesting that they've taken the green out of it. Like, sort of the implications in terms of the color pie, and, them deciding that was something they, I wonder if that was a conscious decision of we don't think this is green, we think that might have been a mistake. I'm curious about that, because that doesn't seem like something they would let green have. And then to, shift it entirely to blue, I'm curious what the thought process was behind that, if there even was.
Well, green has had counter spell-like effects in the past, things like Avoid Fate and Life Force. Okay. Typically these days, their quote-unquote counterspell effects are giving creatures hexproof. Okay. Or redirecting or preventing you from targeting them in the first place. But back in the day, before they really changed around exactly what the color pie meant, sort of like how regeneration in black has transformed into indestructible. Yeah. The counter spells in green have sort of shifted to hexproof.
Okay. And I could see the argument that if you have Stifle in blue and you have Counterspell in blue, right, those are all quote-unquote blue things. But again, to help define what Simic was in the first Ravnica block, I thought it did a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So, Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a character I've voiced before. It's not this version of the character, though. It's Edric, Spymaster of Trest, from the original, I believe it's the original Commander. Colorless green and a blue. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. 2/2 Elf Rogue from the original Commander. Still sees a ton of play to this day. It's one of the best ways to capitalize on mana dorks. Even in Legacy, it sees play. In decks like Delver, it used to run one. Deathrite Shaman, another example of a deck that certainly wants access to an Edric. Just a super powerful card. It can be difficult to amass card advantage in decks that run things like Llanowar Elves. But you go turn 1 Elf, turn 2 something like an Oron Viper, turn 3 attack, draw 3 cards. That's just good magic right there. Edric Spymaster of Trust, one of my favorites, and also a really unique looking character in the history of legendary creatures. You get into you can fall into a rut when it comes to legends. Like, you've got the general, and then you've got like the big legendary beast. But this guy doesn't. I mean, this guy is fighting on a different axis. He's got maps flying around his room. He's in the city. He's in Trest. And he's got a super unique look to him. He's got a super unique effect. Very good for political strategizing in multiplayer games as well, because of the wording on the card. Your opponents don't want to kill him because they can get the effect of drawing the cards as well. So Edric Spymaster of Trest, very solidly at my number 3.
And I thought Vulcan Vaga clearly did a great job, because when they don't replace the artwork, and at this point it's been reprinted technically 5 times. It was in Vintage Masters, which was a Magic Online set. Sure. But in Commander, Commander's Arsenal, Conspiracy, and Commander 2016, they reprinted enough to make sure it was affordable. And again, to have sort of a very political, I think, character, to have a very political effect on the game, which is very interesting. The flavor text being, I am not at liberty to reveal my sources, but I can assure you the price on your head is high.
Yeah, and the price on this card was high for quite a while before it got reprinted so many times.
I encountered this card quite recently when I was at GP Atlanta. I was playing on one of the command zone pods that they had firing throughout the day, and I admit I had never really faced this card before, and I had never really read the text. And I remember I learned that it's each creature, so I was playing my Hapatra deck, and so naturally I had a lot of snakes, and I was splitting them up a little bit, and it got out of hand fast, where it's like, each opponent and each creature that's not that opponent. And oh boy, was I drawing cards. And I was like, I was drawing so many cards and I was discarding them. And finally the guy was like, that's a May. And I was like, I was just drunk with power. It was like, yes, snakes, cards, yes.
Draw all the cards, carding. So many.
Why would you ever want to not draw a card? I don't understand. Especially when you have 99 of them in your deck.
That's true. But yeah, I definitely had to exercise some restraint, otherwise I would have decked myself. At the rate I was going, I would have decked myself.
Hey, this is Commander. There is no such thing as restraining.
Commander, yeah.
Well, I should have just slammed down a Kruphix and had, Magical Christmas Land and then kept all the cards,
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Aaron, what's your number 3?
It takes a lot to make a format. There are a lot of formats that we don't talk about anymore. Frontier, tiny leaders. But every once in a while, a new
Rainbow Stairwell. Sorry.
Oh, the flashes of the pan. I'm blinded.
Yeah.
God.
But every once in a while, a new format is created, and it sticks, and it serves the test of time, if you will. And this card is the namesake of this format. My number 3 is Momir Vig, Simic Visionary. Nice. So Momir Vig was the guild master of the Simic Guild. We've talked about him throughout the episode. He was responsible for Experiment Kraj, but also he is the name of a format called Momir Basic. And so this is based on his avatar, which is not necessarily the card, but close enough. And so what Momir Basic is you have this avatar, which allows you to pay X and discard a card to make a random creature with the converted mana cost of X, but only as a sorcery and only once each turn. And that's the format. It's basically a Magic Online only format. You play this avatar and you just start making creatures. And you can also sometimes lose the Momir lottery if, God forbid, you get to Phage. Because if you play Phage via Momir, you just die, and that's a really great feeling. And so this is something you could do on Magic Online, or you can also just go ahead and play Momir the guy. So Momir himself costs 3 a green and a blue. He's a legendary creature, elf wizard, 2/2. Whenever you cast a green creature spell, you may search your library for a creature card and reveal it. If you do, shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. And then whenever you cast a blue spell, you can reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you put that card into your hand.
Yeah.
And so this guy is not that powerful as a card, but I think he will most be known for his impact on the game itself, for simply being responsible for the Momir format. And so that was the reason why I named him my number 3.
I wanted to name that because I wasn't sure. I was like, well, if I kind of stretch it, no, you need to play a blue creature spell. He triggers off green creatures and blue creatures, which is neat. Then they kind of work off each other. But I agree. I mean, I've spent a non-zero amount of my life playing Momir Basic, and every once in a while you get phaged, and that's just a thing that happens, and then you die. And trying to figure out, should you even try to play a 1-drop? Because every once in a while you get a mana elf, and that's a huge thing.
That's a huge thing.
And sometimes you don't, and it sucks, and you get like a little dorky 1/1, and you lose. Because then you're behind a card, and it becomes a whole thing.
I mean, there are a lot of aces and there's a lot of deuces in Momir Basic. That's for sure.
Yeah.
This was my number 8, by the way.
Nice.
It's a classic Simic. Not just a classic Simic general for EDH, but also kind of the impetus for all of the original Ravnica storyline. Mm-hmm. Like this was sort of Momir accidentally unleashing Experiment Kraj upon the people of Ravnica, along with Svagthir, the trash heap demon that Savra became, and they had to sort of rein in this monster. Was the whole story of Ravnica and dissension, causing a lot of the dissension, I should say. Yeah. Was in control of the Simic Combine for a long time, and has been previous to all of the broken Simic cards that were printed more recently, like Kruphix, was the most popular of the Simic commanders. And certainly when you become a format yourself, it's worth mentioning. Yeah. And also, by the way, there's going to be a new way to lose the Phage lottery, since all of you people out there are going to be opening packs of Legions with Summon the Pack at your unstable pre-release.
Yeah.
You have brand new ways to lose the Phage lottery instead of just Momir Basic. You can open the Untouchable as your rare and then lose the game immediately that way. So that should be fun.
That's fun. And to have a format named after yourself is certainly a worthy enough reason to make it that high on the list. That said, we're going to move here to number 2, where I share the same as someone else.
I also share the same.
Weird. I was going to say,
else.
I was pretty sure I knew exactly who I shared it with, which is fine. Also, when I said earlier, I know what your number 1 is, I know what your number 1 is.
Well, okay.
And that's fine too. However, we are going to go back to Dissension again. How good was Dissension at defining Simic?
Yeah.
Incredibly so. One of the cleanest, purest, most interesting cards to come out of the set in general that is just so cool. It's still just a 2-mana 1/1, which in and of itself, it has to do a whole lot if it's a 2-mana 1/1. And Coiling Oracle from Dissension did a whole bunch. For a green and a blue, it's a 1/1 common Snake Elf Druid. That's right, a Snake Elf Druid.
Because why not?
Because
printed as such.
Yeah.
This one was not a grand creature type update. This one was printed on the card Snake Elf Druid.
That's right.
Which
And when it comes into play these days, when it enters the battlefield, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put it into play. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. So if it ain't ramping you, it's drawing a card, and that's terrific. If you blink it, it's doing the same thing over and over again. If you reanimate it, it's doing the same thing. So it's always good value. It's at common. It really helps to find sort of what is both blue and both green in Simic and what it can do. And I love this card from the moment I saw it back in the day. It was terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is Elvish Visionary, which is a legacy played card with upside. Yeah. I mean, if you're willing to invest in the blue mana. Card is absurd. Saw a ton of play in Constructed. Has seen a ton of play in all Constructed formats, including Legacy. Was one of the original Alurin cards. Combos very well with Cabal Therapy. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have played that combination in the past. Great to blink. Great to chump block with. It's just a value creature. If somebody asks you, what does the blue-green color combination do? Just point them to Coiling Oracle. This is what that card does.
Yeah.
What's really crazy is that it took so many years before Coiling Oracle was actually reprinted. because if you look at, essentially, Dissension was released on May 5th, 2006, okay? The next time that Coiling Oracle was reprinted was in Dual Decks Kiora versus Elspeth. That's February 27th, 2015. So you had almost 9 years for this thing to be reprinted beyond Dissension. Now, once it was reprinted in Dual Decks Kiora versus Elspeth, then it was shown in Commander 2015, Conspiracy Take the Crown, Commander 2016, Modern Masters 2017. Like, sort of like the gates opened. But there was a point in time in which, like, Coiling Oracle started to get kind of rarer and rarer each year because they just wouldn't reprint it. Felt like there was no place to put it. And even though it has an Arena League foil, that's how old this card is. It has an Arena League foil.
Wow.
You should look up Arena League for those who have no idea what I'm talking about. It was like sort of the hipster FNM. But yeah, so Coiling Oracle was just absolutely Simic from top to bottom. And
card's amazing.
Also, me and Ruben's number 2.
Yeah.
So Aaron, what's your number 2?
The only thing more powerful than being responsible for creating a format, I think, is being the namesake for a deck, being the thing that establishes a deck. This card is the bane of existence for many a player, including myself. I'm never happy to face this deck. The deck always just plays out in ridiculous fashion, and you're just like, what did I do that was unchristian to deserve this? Oh, yeah, I yelled at a guy for playing Progenitor Mimic. That's why I'm happy to do this. My number 2 is Slippery Bogle.
Yep.
Also known as Bogles, and it is Bogles. It's not Boggles. Check yourself. It's Bogles. And so it's a hybrid mana, so it's green or a blue, whatever you got. It's creature beast, and it's a 1/1 with hexproof, and that's it. It's a 1/1 hexproof. But when you suit this thing up, so like when you play a turn 1 Bogle and then you go like turn 2 Rancor, or God forbid, you get to a point where you're throwing Daybreak Coronet on this thing, you're in for a really, really bad time. And it just gets out of hand so quickly. And there are so few decks, particularly in Modern, where this deck really shines. Unless you're running something like Liliana of the Veil, which is very kind of unique to Jund, although there are some other decks that might, jam it in there. There really aren't that many Edict effects going around to where, what are you going to do? Up until recently, there weren't very many good board wipes. They were running like Anger, but even then it was like, this thing obviously gets out of Anger's reach very quickly. We weren't seeing control decks for a while, so Supreme Verdict certainly wasn't a thing. This just gets out of control very quickly. And every once in a while, it will just spike a tournament. I know Cedric Phillips loves him some Bogles. Reed Duke, I think, did well at Worlds one time with this deck, surprisingly.
Second place.
MTA, Magic Damage Ring, loves this deck, and it's just a thorn in our side. And
Dan Ward. Big shout out to Dan Ward, who loves Bogles.
God bless it.
I played some Bogles in my day, and Bogle was number 4 on my list, by the way.
Nice.
Slippery Bogle. We were talking about how good of a job Dissension did. Eventide didn't do a great job with their green and blue cards. You got your Overbeings of Myth, and you got your Short Crasher Mimics, and those aren't too great. But Slippery Bogle certainly coming in the clutch. This, along with Glade Cover Scout, being the core of the deck, and finally being able to play auras in a constructed format. I've played quite a few Bogles decks in the past, allowing me to sleeve up such hits as Cartouche of Singularity in the past.
Nice.
And open the armory. Open the armory, ladies and gentlemen.
What in the world does that card do?
It searches your library for an aura or equipment card and puts it in your hand from
Why not
Shadows.
just go all the way
Shadows.
against the Garda's aid? Let's go the whole 9.
Oh yeah, sure.
Jeez.
I've played quite a few strange enchantments on my creatures in Bogle's decks over the years. So
I mean, and Slippery Bogle is a good way to again see that this hasn't been printed since 2008. It's coming up on its 10th anniversary. There was only one printing in Eventide. It's like $1.50 to $2 depending on where you're looking for it, just for a common, because it's the core of that deck. This was the troll ascetic sort of mechanic, quote unquote, before they even named it. They didn't even have a name for it.
Troll Shroud.
Yeah, Troll Shroud, which is like I get to do stuff, but you don't get to do stuff. Right. And it turns out that's really annoying. Crazy, stupid, annoying. And this little dork has created more frustrating moments in many people's lives. I've seen people just be crushed by seeing the Bogle just get Bogly and more Bogledom, and it's super gross, and I can't stand it because I don't know. This is one of those I wouldn't play with it because it bugs me. Like, it bugs me to use this thing It's scary and gross. And it looks scary and gross, which is nice too.
It does look scary and gross, to be fair.
Now, note the flavor text being Bogles are very tasty if you can get the skin off. It's getting a blade on them. That's the problem.
Yep.
Because they're slippery.
I get it.
With sound effects.
Wait, how do they? Yeah.
Okay. So, we're going to move here to our number 1, which I have a feeling this is Ruben's number 7 and Aaron's number 6. I'm pretty sure, thanks to the process of elimination, but that's okay. This one in particular was basically was an old school card, which is appreciated. This is one of the original blue-green cards, and it's nice that way back in the day, way back in Apocalypse, when they first made enemy-colored cards, they got one of them so good, so right, that it to me, like, when we're going to do our top 10 Simic cards, and one of the things I like to think of is, like, what's the first thing that popped into my mind when I said we're going to do blue-green cards, and that was Mystic Snake. For 2 blue, a green, and a generic mana. It is a rare from Apocalypse for a 2/2 snake, and you may play it anytime you can play an instant, which nowadays is called Flash. And when it enters the battlefield, you counter target spell. And that's what it does. It is a 2/2 with sweet value. It's basically 2 blue for your counter spell, a green and a generic mana for your bear, and you put your chocolate plus your peanut butter, and you got a Mystic Snake, and it's great, and you blink it, and it kills stuff, and it's great in cube, and it was amazing in standard, and it came back, and it was super cool when it showed up in Time Spiral. It was a time-shifted rare, which was amazing. They didn't even have to change the artwork. They've never changed the artwork, best I can figure here. Sometimes, Darren Bader just, he just knocks it out of the park. That's what a Mystic Snake looks like, and it's going to wreck your face and come and get you. That's what it does.
Yeah. This was part of the cycle alongside of Absorb, Undermine, and Suffocating Blast. Mm-hmm. And Absorb gained you 3 life. That's Healing Salve. Suffocating Blast dealt 3 damage. That's Lightning Bolt. Undermine made an opponent lose 3 life. I don't know what card that is, but that's a black thing to do.
Sure.
And the card that they decided to staple onto Counterspell for the green combo was Grizzly Bears.
Yeah.
So they just made it a creature instead of making a token, which I appreciate to this day because you can blink it. It does keep it out of Modern because you can't really Snapcaster Mage a Mystic Snake. But you're right. This was on my list. This was my number 7.
Nice.
I was super excited to play these when they were out in Apocalypse. I was so excited when they time shifted them. The Mystic Snake is just a perfectly named, perfectly arted, perfectly designed, well done Magic card.
And so, Ruben, I got a feeling I know what your number 1 is.
Ruben and I actually have the same.
We share.
Ruben!
Really? Look at you guys! Oh my god!
Ruben, you know what this is like, Ruben?
What's
when
that?
a bunch of girls get together and they're really good friends and eventually they get on the same cycle? We've been doing this long enough.
No, I don't know what that's I've heard of that, but I don't know what it's like.
We're on the same cycle, Ruben. It's taken us 2 years to get here.
Amazing. Wow.
You're on the same cycle, guys.
I'm glad for that.
Well, whoever wants to take it, take it.
Ruben.
All right, I'll take it. My number 1 is, I think, the 3rd creature on the list with my list of casting cost colorless, green, and blue, but it's the first one that is also an artifact creature.
Which people forget all the time.
Absolutely.
All the time.
My number 1 is Shardless Agent.
Wow.
Bursting onto the scene in Legacy thanks to one Mr. Gerald Thompson. Perhaps you've heard of him. Mm-hmm. Because, Brainstorm is highly played. And when you play Brainstorm with a card with Cascade, which Shardless Agent is colorless, green, blue, human rogue, artifact creature, 2/2 Cascade, then you can stack your deck. And when you can stack your deck with a free spell, such as, Ancestral Vision, then it's just a 2/2 that draws you 3 cards when it enters the battlefield, which is absurd. Shardless Agent, from the Plane Chase and Commander decks, originally,
right.
Also reprinted in Eternal Masters, and also I think as a Judge foil. I could be wrong on that one. But yeah, very powerful card, being able to get even just another 2-mana spell out of your deck. Even if you can't stack your deck, you can get a Coiling Oracle, for example.
Or a Tarmogoyf.
Or more usually it's a Baleful Strix, one of the Plane Chase besties that gets to come along.
Creature.
Another artifact creature, exactly. Another artifact creature with value.
Yeah.
that we talked about during our Dimir episode. Just an absolutely great card. Bouncing it to your hand is awesome, so you get to play this with tricksy kind of bounce effects and Ninja of the Deep Hours and whatnot like that. But primarily, the best thing to do is to cascade into an Ancestral Vision. I've lived the dream of cascading a Bloodbraid Elf into an Ancestral Vision in the past, which is quite entertaining.
Filthy, I think is the word you're looking for.
Absolutely disgusting, for sure. And yeah, I think this card is just spectacular, well deserving of the #1 slot, and Aaron agrees.
Yeah, this is also a card that has defined an archetype similar to the way that Bogle's had. We have Shardless Bug and Legacy, and so when you're packing a deck full of just value cards, this card was first printed in a Plane Chase set, Plane Chase 2012. I can't imagine that they thought this card was going to have the impact that it has had. When you pack a deck full of just the most powerful cards, like you often do in Legacy, cascading into Abrupt Decay, cascading into Tarmogoyf, Baleful Strikes, it very rarely ever whiffs. Like you're almost always happy to see it. It also sees play in the Aloran decks because you can flash it in. You can also, like Ruben said, do bouncing shenanigans, and again, it's just sort of defined an archetype. And when I was really torn between this and Bogle's in terms of what I wanted my #1 to be, but ultimately I decided Legacy had a little bit more a higher power level to it, just a little bit more of a legacy, no pun intended. And I just think Shardless Agent overall has made more of a dent than Slippery Bogle. But yeah, very powerful card, very innocuous looking card. Like you first look at it and you're like, it's fine, and then you start pairing it with things like Suspend and it's just out of control. We will never see this in Modern. And it's great.
Yeah, this was my #4. Mm-hmm. And Shardless Agent, I went back to look. At one point in time, was $25 a piece. Yeah. Now, before they reprinted it in Eternal Masters, and before it showed up in Plane Chase Anthology, nowadays it's like $3.50, which is still fine. Again, this is an uncommon. This isn't like
it's an uncommon printed in.
Yeah, they upshifted the rarity for Eternal Masters because it really is worth a rare slot. I mean,
yeah, and all the other times that it was an uncommon were printed in Plane Chase or Commander products.
Yeah,
no, just Plane Chase. It was
just
not
in any Plane Chase and Eternal Masters.
And that's it. And then the Plane Chase Anthology, which was not really a set release.
Right.
So, and one of my favorite things is like, it's just this sort of picture like, hey, can you paint this person with like these 2 knives? And then like, and flip it. And, like, I don't know where, I don't know if they planned it that way.
That's why he's hanging upside down.
Right, because flip it.
Because why not?
Why not, right? Like, oh, that's a really cute picture. Is he? Can we just all right, we're done, everybody. We rotated the picture. We're good. Shardless Agent being a format-defining card, being value on top of value on top of value, being a cascade card that is very cheap, which means you can manipulate it to get what you want every single time, and also just having that sort of legacy in and of itself. Subliminal hit. But well done. $25 a piece for an uncommon was sort of unheard of until, Shardless Agent was like, yeah, I'm worth it. Yeah. Maybe it's Maybelline or maybe it's Shardless Agent. You just never know. Wow.
Usually it's Shardless Agent.
Okay. So that was our top 10 favorite Simic cards. We want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. You see our top 10 on the screen right now. We want you guys to tell us what your honorable mention is. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me, and happy Thanksgiving, friends.
That's right. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
That's right, because I'm thankful for both of you guys.
Oh, thank you. I'm thankful for Aaron.
Oh my goodness!
Not for Evan though. I'm
we're on the same cycle.
I know.
Right, because we're on the same cycle.
Yeah. You got that cycle. I'm not on that cycle, guys.
Right, you got to get on the cycle.
We got to work on this. We got to work on it. Anyway,
have you shared a #1 with Aaron yet? This is the first time I have. So
I think so. I think you guys are the first, and I'm not good enough.
Not every day I share my #1 with someone. So.
I think that we've shared a #1.
I believe that we have.
Pretty sure we have.
We're on some cycles, but
we had Bolt at #1, for example.
Yes, we're not all in the same cycle.
Right.
That's it. We're going to go to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/MagicMikes, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMikes. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmikespodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another top 10 episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving.